The night air hung thick with the smell of gasoline and asphalt as Sergeant Marcus Cole pulled into the lonely gas station off Highway 287. It was nearly midnight, the kind of hour when even the crickets had gone silent and the hum of the neon sign seemed too loud. His old pickup rolled to a stop beside pump number 3, engine ticking as it cooled. Marcus stepped out, stretching his shoulders, his worn army jacket catching the faint orange glow from the lights overhead. He'd been driving for 8 hours straight. No music, no company, just the endless ribbon of road and the steady hum of thoughts he couldn't quite shake. Home was still another 100 miles away. After 2 tours overseas, home was more a word than a feeling. But tonight, he promised himself, he'd get there. He needed quiet, peace, maybe a full night's sleep for once. The station was almost deserted. A lone clerk leaned on the counter inside, his face buried in a phone screen. A moth beat itself senseless against the buzzing light near the door. Somewhere in the dark, a coyote howled, distant, mournful. Marcus glanced around, instincts sharp even though he told himself they didn't need to be anymore. Old habits didn't die, they just learned to wait. He grabbed the nozzle, set it into the tank, and let the gas flow. The rhythmic click of the pump was strangely calming. He looked up at the sky, flat black, stars smeared across it like powdered glass. He almost smiled. Then came the sound, low at first, a deep growl that rolled through the air like thunder building behind the hills. Then another, and another. 6 motorcycles burst out of the night, their engines roaring as they cut across the lot in a chaotic arc of headlight beams and exhaust fumes. The noise shattered the silence. The leader, a tall, broad man with a beard like steel wool, killed his engine first and coasted to a stop right across from Marcus's truck. The others followed suit, fanning out around him like wolves claiming territory. Marcus didn't move. He capped the tank, replaced the nozzle, and stood by the door of his truck, expression unreadable. He'd seen groups like this before, the kind of men who lived for noise, for the show of power. Their jackets were black leather, patches stitched across the backs, Steel Vultures MC. Local biker gang, maybe. He didn't care. He just wanted to pay and leave. One of them, a lanky guy with a shaved head and tattoos snaking down his neck, noticed him first. "Hey, look what we got here," he called, grinning through yellow teeth. "Soldier boy." Marcus didn't answer. He reached into the cab for his wallet. The man stepped closer, his boots scuffing the pavement. "What's the matter, hero? Too good to talk to regular folks." Another biker chuckled, pulling off his helmet. "Nah, man, look at that jacket. Bet he thinks he's Captain America." The laughter spread among them, loud and taunting. Marcus kept his voice even. "Just passing through." "Oh, we know," said the leader, the one with the gray beard. His voice was gravelly, slow, deliberate. "You soldiers think you can just come back from your little war and look down on everyone else. That it?" He stepped forward, close enough that Marcus could smell the stale beer on his breath. "Say something, tough guy." Marcus met his gaze, calm as still water. "You really don't want to do this." The words hung there, quiet but heavy. Something in his tone made the laughter fade for a second, just a second. Then one of them snorted. "What, you gonna salute us to death?" The group roared with laughter again. The leader smiled now, thin and mean. He reached out, fingers grazing the patch on Marcus's jacket that read U.S. Army. "Nice threads. Maybe I'll get one of these myself." Marcus's hand twitched, just barely. His stance shifted, weight balanced, ready without looking ready. The leader didn't notice. The others were circling slowly, their boots echoing on the concrete, their voices rising again in cruel amusement. Inside the station, the clerk peeked up, eyes darting nervously toward the door. He could sense the tension brewing, like a storm pressing against the glass. Marcus took a breath, steady and controlled. He wasn't scared. He'd forgotten what fear felt like years ago. But he hated this feeling. The edge, the pull of something primal that told him to act. He wanted peace tonight, just peace. The leader leaned closer. "What's wrong, soldier? You look nervous." Marcus didn't blink. Last chance to walk away. The men around him erupted in another wave of mocking laughter. The leader smirked and shoved him in the chest, testing his ground. That was the moment the air changed. Quiet, sharp, electric. Marcus didn't move yet, but his eyes hardened. He'd seen this look before in mirrors after firefights. The kind that said, "One more push, and it's over." The leader didn't recognize it. Not yet. But he was about to learn the difference between a man in a jacket and a soldier who hadn't forgotten how to fight. The laughter hung in the air for a beat too long, the kind that was meant to provoke, to humiliate. Marcus stood still, eyes level, his chest rising and falling in a slow, deliberate rhythm. His training whispered in the back of his mind, "Breathe, assess, act if you must." The bearded leader smirked, tilting his head like he'd already won whatever game he thought this was. "Nothing to say," he taunted. "All that discipline, and you can't even stand up for yourself." Marcus didn't answer. Words weren't going to help. He knew men like this, loud because they needed to be, cruel because silence scared them. Still, he hoped it wouldn't come to what his instincts were preparing for. He'd spent years learning how to fight, years wishing he'd never need to again. Another biker, heavier, his jacket half unzipped to reveal a snake tattoo coiling across his chest, stepped closer. "Man, look at this guy. Straight statue." He reached out, jabbing 2 fingers into Marcus's shoulder. "Say something, soldier boy." Marcus took a slow breath. "Walk away." The man laughed, loud and sharp, turning to his buddies. "Walk away," he says. "Oh, this is good." He pushed again, harder this time, enough to make a point. That was the mistake. Marcus's body moved before his mind caught up. A clean, practiced motion, fast as a reflex. He caught the man's wrist mid-push, twisted it outward, and used the man's momentum to drop him hard to the ground. The sound of the fall cracked through the night. The biker groaned, clutching his arm, staring up in disbelief. For a moment, nobody moved. The other bikers froze, unsure if they'd actually seen what they just saw. Marcus stayed still, hand lowered, ready but calm. "I said walk away." It should have ended there. It could have. But the leader's pride didn't allow it. "You think that makes you tough?" The gray-bearded man barked, stepping forward, anger flaring in his eyes. "You think you can touch one of mine and just walk out?" Marcus met his stare, quiet but unwavering. "I didn't touch him. He made a move. I finished it." The leader's lip curled. "Finish this." He swung. A wild, untrained punch, thrown with more ego than technique. Marcus sidestepped, caught the wrist, and drove his forearm into the man's ribs, pivoting as he did. The biker wheezed, stumbling back, and another lunged from behind. Marcus turned, ducked low, and swept his leg out, sending the man crashing into the concrete beside the fuel pump. Now it was chaos. 2 more rushed in. One grabbed Marcus from behind, arms locking around his shoulders. The other came from the front, fist raised. Marcus dropped his weight, snapped his head back, hitting the man behind square in the nose, a sickening crunch, then rolled forward, sending both men sprawling. His boots scraped the concrete as he regained his stance, heart thudding steady but controlled. The noise had changed. No more laughter. Just grunts, gasps, the sound of boots scuffing the ground. Inside the store, the clerk fumbled for his phone, peeking over the counter. He wanted to call someone, anyone, but couldn't look away. The soldier wasn't fighting like someone trying to prove a point. He was fighting like someone who knew exactly how much damage to do, and how to stop before it went too far. One of the younger bikers hesitated near his bike, hands half raised. "Hey, man, let's just cool it, all right." The leader wiped blood from the corner of his mouth, glaring at Marcus like pride was the only thing keeping him upright. "You don't walk away from me," he spat. Marcus shook his head slowly. "You already lost when you started this." The older man growled and lunged again, but Marcus was faster. One step forward, one clean motion. He caught the man's arm, turned him sideways, and brought him down in a controlled takedown that left him breathless and pinned. "Stay down," Marcus said quietly. The man struggled once, then stopped. The rest backed away, muttering curses under their breath. One of them helped the fallen leader up, eyes darting between Marcus and the truck, unsure whether to run or fight. Marcus released the hold, stood straight, and adjusted his jacket, like he was brushing off dust rather than violence. His breathing was steady, his pulse was steady, his hands didn't shake. He just looked at the group, a calm that only made them more uneasy. You boys should think twice before picking your next fight, he said, his tone measured, not mocking. Someone might not stop when they should. No one replied. Engines sputtered to life one by one, the smell of exhaust filling the air. The leader gave him a final glare before revving his bike and tearing out of the lot, the others following behind. Silence returned, thick and heavy. Marcus watched their taillights vanish into the dark, then turned toward the station. The clerk's eyes were wide, mouth half open. Man, they mess with everyone who stops here, he said, voice trembling. Marcus slid a few bills onto the counter, calm as ever. Not tonight. He grabbed a bottle of water, nodded once to the clerk, and walked out. The night swallowed him again, quiet, cool, endless. As he climbed back into the truck, he looked at his reflection in the window. The same eyes that had seen too much, done too much, stared back at him. He exhaled slowly, turned the key, and drove off into the dark, not angry, not proud, just tired. Because the truth was, it wasn't about the fight. It was about the part of him that still didn't know how to stop fighting. The sound of the motorcycles faded into the night until there was nothing left but the soft hum of the gas station lights and the low murmur of the Texas wind. Marcus stood by his truck, the smell of exhaust still hanging in the air, the adrenaline in his blood cooling slowly. His knuckles ached, though he hadn't thrown a single reckless punch, just controlled movement, precision born of training. He looked around, making sure no one was hurt worse than they deserved. A few of the bikers had limped off clutching ribs or bruised pride. He hadn't broken anything he didn't have to. The clerk finally stepped out from behind the counter, his eyes wide. Man, I thought they were gonna kill you, he said, voice shaking slightly. They come through here every few nights. Tear stuff up, scare people. You, just. He gestured vaguely at the empty lot. You just sent them running. Marcus picked up the bottle of water he'd dropped earlier and unscrewed the cap. They'll think twice before doing it again, he said quietly, taking a slow drink. His tone wasn't triumphant, it was calm, almost weary. The clerk nodded, still watching him like he couldn't quite believe what he'd seen. You in the military or something? Marcus gave a small half smile. Not anymore. That explains it, the clerk said. You moved like you knew what you were doing. Most folks would have been on the ground begging. Most folks shouldn't have to fight, Marcus replied. He leaned against the truck, staring into the darkness beyond the pumps. The silence pressed in again, thick and familiar. It reminded him of the nights overseas, when everything went still after the chaos, when survival didn't feel like victory, just quiet aftermath. He stayed there for a moment longer, letting the stillness sink in. Somewhere far off, a coyote called again, its cry carrying across the empty fields. Marcus capped his water bottle and nodded toward the clerk. You take care of yourself. Maybe call the sheriff, let them know those guys were here. Yeah, the clerk said, rubbing the back of his neck. They won't believe me if I tell them what happened. You sure you don't want to stay till they show up? Marcus shook his head. I've had enough waiting around in places like this. He got into his truck, the seat creaking under his weight. As he turned the key, the old engine rumbled to life. He glanced once in the rearview mirror, the gas station shrinking behind him, flickering neon casting long shadows across the pavement. He could still see the dent where one of the bikers had hit the pump, the faint scuff marks from boots on concrete. Signs of a moment that would already start to feel unreal by morning. The road stretched ahead, empty and endless. The first hint of dawn brushed the horizon in faint streaks of silver. Marcus drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other resting loosely near the window. The hum of the tires against asphalt was steady, almost comforting. For the first time in a long time, he felt the smallest flicker of peace. He thought about the leader, the anger in the man's face, the pride behind every insult. He'd seen that same look in too many men before, soldiers and civilians alike. Some people wore hate the way others wore armor, too afraid to set it down. Marcus didn't hate them, he pitied them. They were fighting the wrong kind of war. A few miles down the road, he pulled over at a rest stop overlooking the plains. The horizon was turning gold now, sunlight spilling slowly across the land. He stepped out of the truck, the early air cool against his skin, and stretched. The jacket caught the wind, its faded U.S. army patch flapping slightly. He stood there a long time, watching the sun climb higher, the light washing away the night's tension. He'd spent years in places where mornings didn't mean safety, where a new day just meant another chance to fight. But here, now, this morning felt different. A pickup passed by on the highway, horn blaring in greeting. Marcus raised a hand in quiet acknowledgement. He didn't know where he was heading next exactly, just home, wherever that was supposed to be now. Maybe he'd find a place that didn't smell like jet fuel or gun oil. Maybe he'd learn how to sleep without waking at every sound. He took one last look back toward the way he'd come. The gas station was miles behind him now, tucked back into the dark like a memory. The bikers would talk, twist the story, maybe pretend they hadn't been beaten by a single man. But somewhere in their laughter, there'd be hesitation. A reminder that they'd picked a fight with someone who didn't need to brag about winning. Marcus smiled faintly at the thought. Not out of pride. Just quiet satisfaction that the world still had a little justice left in it, even if it came from tired hands. He climbed back into the truck, turned on the radio. A country song drifted through the speakers, something about going home and starting over. He let it play, rolling down the window to feel the wind on his face. The highway stretched out before him, long and open, and as the sun climbed higher, the world around him seemed a little less heavy. He wasn't running from his past anymore. He wasn't fighting anyone. For the first time in years, Sergeant Marcus Cole was simply driving forward, and that, he realized, was enough.